In this screencast, we'll talk about generating and processing get forms in Perl. Let's suppose that we have this get form. Logically speaking, get forms consists of several user inputs. For example, text areas. Let's say that this is a text area, and this is another text area. It doesn't have to be text areas; can be radio buttons or checklists. And so forth. And here is another user input, and then there is a submit button somewhere on the page that allows the user to submit the input values. So let's type submit, and let me center it on the button. Here we go. So this is the submit button, and since there can be multiple user inputs, we can assign a unique name to each input. So let's say that this input will be in1, this input will be called in2. We can think of these names as variables, and this input will be in3. And so the text that the user actually types in these text areas will be the value of in1, in2, or in3. Now this form can be generated dynamically or statically. So let's say we can actually create a static HTML document that will encode this form, or we can write a script, and we will write a script shortly, a form generating script that will generate the script dynamically. Now, what happens when the user actually types in these inputs and presses submit? The CGI server will invoke the form processing script that we will associate with the form. So that's another critical component of form processing. So let's say that the user types in text space 1 into the first text area, text space 2 into the second text area, and text space 3 into the third text area. So the value of in1 is text 1, the value of in2 is text 2, and then the value of in3 is text 3. Then the query string that will be submitted to the form processing script after the user presses the submit button will consist of three name value pairs. The first name value pair will be in1 equals text plus 1, plus will replace space. Then the second name value pair will be in2 equals text plus 2. Again, space is replaced with plus. This is the CGI form processing protocol convention. And then the third will be in3 equals text plus 3. And this is the query string that will be submitted to the form processing script. Okay, well, let's write a Perl script that generates a get form with one user input. First, we start our CGI HTTP server, the Python CGI HTTP server, and okay, so the script will be stored in the CGI bin directory, and we just have invoked it off the command line, and this is the dynamic HTML that it will generate, and this is the critical form part of the dynamic HTML page. So we can invoke it in a browser. So gen get submit form.pl, and this is what this is the form that it has generated. And this is the source code of gen get submit form.pl, the Perl script that generates a get form with one user input. So we use the CGI.pm, generate header, generate start HTML, and this is where we specified an action or the name of the form processing script, process get submit form.pl, and the name of the user input is user underscore input. So the value of the string that the user inputs into the corresponding text area will be the value of the name user underscore input. This is the URL that the browser needs to go to invoke, to ask the CGI HTTP server to run the form generating script, and this is the URL that gets to run after the user types in MySpace input, for example. So the query string will be user underscore input equals my plus input in this case. So let's take a look at the form processing script, process get submit form.pl. So first we split the query string, the value of the query string on the equal sign, because we only have one name value pair. And then if the name is equal to user underscore input, then we will print its value inside the h2 tags, the start and end h2 tags. Right? And this is that name in dynamic HTML. So let's type in my input and submit it. So, and as you can see, user input equals my plus input. The space is replaced with the plus sign. Let's type in my longer input. Okay, so again, you can see user input equals my plus longer plus input. The spaces are replaced with pluses, and that's the URL. Okay, let's write another Perl script that generates a get form with multiple user input, and the name inputs, but the name of that script is gen get submit form2.pl, and as you can see, there are 3 user inputs. 1, 2, 3. And this is the source code, and it's very similar, except that we have 3 user input names, user underscore input 1, and this is the form processing script, process get submit form2.pl, and then this is input name 1, user input 1, this is input name, the second input name, user input 2, and then user input 3 is the third input name, and the submit button. Let's take a look at the corresponding form processing script, process get submit form2.pl. We'll get the query string. The query string in this case consists of 3 name value pairs separated by the ampersand. So we split the query string, the value of the query string on the ampersand. Then we print header, print start HTML, and then call the process name val pairs subroutine, and then print end HTML. The process name val pair subroutine first splits each name value pair on the equal sign to get the name and the value, and if the name is equal to user input 1, we print it out. user input 2, we print it out, otherwise we'll print name is not recognized. This is an example of how we can actually dispatch on specific values of user inputs. So let's type in my first input, my second input, and then my third input. So and click on submit. So user input 1 equals to my plus first plus input, user input 2 equals to my plus second plus input, spaces are replaced with pluses, and user input 3 is not recognized. And notice the URL. The query string consists of 3 name value pairs. User input 1 equals my plus first plus input, and this is the second name value pair, and this is the third name value pair. This query string is given